Hello and welcome to Matt Chambers Connects, a podcast hosted by Matt Chambers. This is the podcast that transcends boundaries, empowers cross-cultural connections, and fosters a more connected world. I'm your host, Matt Chambers, and I invite you to join us on this quest to expand our understanding and build bridges between my two favorite places on the planet, Latin America and the United States. I've been traveling, living, and doing business in Latin America for nearly 2 decades. Guys, I'm here today with my friend John, who I have known here in Medellin, Colombia for, wow, 6-7 years, right?
No, I've been here 7, so I think you've been here for just about the right amount, same amount of time, I
Yep.
believe.
Yeah. I think about 2017 we met in
Yeah.
the gym, and
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah,
we've
I
been
remember
friends
that.
since, man. It's
I
been
actually remember that. Seems like yesterday.
I know, I can't believe it's been 7 years.
Wow.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
How have you been? Everything good?
Everything's really good. I've been actually away from Medellin for a while. I was with my family up in Connecticut, but just it was so cold up there. It was 15 degrees and Celsius, that's -5. And when you tell the taxi driver menos 5 de grados, they go crazy. They
Yeah.
can't even picture it. I just don't like winter. And this part of Latin America is just great for me. The weather, of course, Medellin is famous for its weather. It's consistent. It's low temperature of 65, high temperature of 82, rains every afternoon and a little bit in the evening. That's what you got every day. And I love it.
Yeah, it's so funny. Everyone that I've had on the show so far that has experience in Medellin, which has been quite a few at this point, everyone brings up the weather.
Yeah,
It's
it's famous
the
for
first
its
thing out of
weather. They
everyone's
talk about San Diego, and I really don't know San Diego. I understand it has great weather, but I can't imagine it's any better than here.
Yeah, and in San Diego, you have to pay 60% taxes. You don't want to do that.
Oh, no, we don't want to do that. Here we don't pay taxes and we get a 60% discount
Exactly.
on everything,
Everything.
and more. There's multiple layers of benefit for sure.
That's right.
And that's true. I think that's true for all of Latin America, which is really, if you're predisposed to like looking for an adventure in your life or maybe leaving your old world and want to discover new things, then there are multiple benefits to leaving the United States, perhaps, if that's where you're from. And
Anywhere in the Western world, I would argue, right?
yeah,
If you're looking for something.
yeah, the quality of life here jumps up many levels, and we can talk about that later if you want, but there are many specific benefits that you can get.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's not perfect. Quality of life is, for me, once I got comfortable, once I did my research and I got comfortable with the pricing structure here, I started to look at Medellin as an investment decision, actually, not just like a
Absolutely.
place to go and live, but you look back at your financial situation and you can see that you can actually make money by living here
Absolutely.
and you don't have to do anything.
Exactly.
It's weird, but I don't know if you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you're invested well and you have enough money, I've seen it myself. If you're invested well and you come here and you're living a normal life,
Well,
your money makes more than you spend.
Let's just say hypothetically, you have some kind of an investment account. Okay. So you have some money working for you, maybe in a fund that tracks the S&P, or you have some stocks or whatever you have. But on top of that, if you have Social Security of any reasonable amount, I have found that I'm not touching my other investments at all. They're just sitting there reinvesting dividends, and I'm living off my Social Security, and I have money to spend at the end of the month. It's like magic.
Yeah. And if you were in Connecticut,
So-
it should be exhausting all that.
Yeah, just to put a pin in that for a second. But Connecticut decided to become like Florida because
No state tax.
all the retirees were like bailing out of Connecticut
For
because
sure.
there was all that tax. And so to keep those people there, they're phasing in the same kind of tax structure that Florida has over 3 years. It starts this year. So I did have my legal residence in Florida, but now I'm going to go back and keep it in Connecticut because that's where my family is. It just makes more logistical sense for me to be there. So anyway,
That makes sense for them. But in my opinion, they're going to need not only take away the state tax, but they're going to have to put a fucking heater in that place.
I'm here because I don't need a heater or an air conditioner, which is amazing. And my laundry dries in 2 hours. And I don't have to run it through a dryer. So I'm like, I buy nice clothes and I don't want to ruin them in a dryer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, we're getting off topic.
Let's do this. I want people to be able to put, you know, who they're listening to and who they're talking to into perspective so that they know what you did in the state
Okay.
prior to coming here. So
Yeah.
why don't we talk about that? Why don't we go a little bit through your life journey, how you grew up? I know you grew up in Argentina specifically.
Yeah. I was born in Argentina. My father went to work right after the Second World War, because he had some Spanish heritage and spoke Spanish. went to work for Pan American World Airways, which a lot of people never even heard of it, but they put airline travel on the map. Basically, they were the first airline to like bring the world to the United States or customers, clients everywhere. And in those days, Pan Am was looking to build routes all around the world. And of course, there were routes from the United States to Central and South America. And because my father had some Spanish background, could speak the language, he got sent to Argentina, where I came along and spent the first couple of years of my life there. We moved to Peru. I think we spent about a year in Recife, Brazil. And then we moved to Coral Gables, Florida, where I did my growing up.
Right in Miami.
Yeah, Miami. Yeah. Moved from there I went to military school, Stanton Military Academy for 1 year, which I absolutely loved. And then I ended up moving to Connecticut. My father took a job with American Airlines. And a side note, he's in marketing, obviously. But let me just back up for a second and say that his job in Central and South America was helping. They didn't know what tourists were. They didn't know what tourism was. They didn't know what foreigners were. And they needed to be ready to accept a tidal wave of people coming with money, wanting to spend it, wanting to see their country and have experiences in a new culture. And so he had to teach people how to deal with tourists. And so that was his fundamental job. So anyway, so back to what we were talking about, he went to work for American Airlines, and this is all going to tell you why I have been doing what I've been doing. But when he went to work for American Airlines, he is the person who started the idea of the in-flight magazine. Do you remember those?
I do remember
in-flight magazines? He said, he thought, I've got a captive audience just sitting there for a period of time. And so he started publishing something called The American Way, which was the first of many different in-flight magazines. So he was very much into marketing. That ultimately ended up being my path, my professional path. I ran a couple of strategic design firms, helping clients do marketing communications. And ultimately, before I came here, I had a company that was focused on helping companies, with their strategic branding, positioning of their product or service, and how best to communicate it to internal audiences, which is important, and connect that to external audiences, because it doesn't work unless you have the same conversation coming from the company and why we're here to a set of people who are already predisposed to want to know about your product. So that's basically I'm a creative director and owner of that business, which we closed a couple of years ago before I came down to Colombia.
I know you told me a story. We were out to dinner one time and you told me a story about being in New York. You had like your first year in New York or something, you couldn't find work in the beginning and you ended up as a taxi driver for about a year. And then there was a really cool story about your life that I think is important when you were trying to get a job as a young guy at a very famous design firm. Can you share that? I think
story?
It was just, to me, I think I got a lot of value out of that because it's a good lesson on persistence. And I've always been a persistent person myself. But
I think that's one of your strengths.
Those kind of stories.
Once you get your teeth into something, I guess we're both in sales in a way. We don't want to deal with no, right?
I don't like that.
I like the challenge of finding the door in.
I was thinking about that earlier today. I went out for a walk early this morning just for some exercise, and I was just reflecting a little bit on my own life, especially in the furniture business. I think when I look back, everything I did was basically a cold call, and not just picking up the phone and calling, but if I picked up the phone and called and someone didn't answer, like an owner of a company or CEO of a company, then he didn't answer my phone call. Of course, he doesn't even know who the hell I am. So who's this Matt guy? He didn't even have me saved in his phone. Why would he answer? So I think showing up at his office was important. Just being the guy that he sees you every week, and then eventually they work.
Yeah, you got to get in the car and go over there.
Why don't you share that story about you were a taxi driver for a year?
Yeah, I drove. Actually, when I graduated from NYU in film and television production, and actually had Martin Scorsese as one of my professors. He was just a young guy. Yeah, he was making his first movie at the time, and I remember him very well. We all were making films all the time, and I made some very abstract films, and I remember the class hating my films, but I remember Martin Scorsese going like, yeah, he's got some interesting ideas there. I think that could be developed. And that sort of made my life in a way to have, he wasn't Martin Scorsese then.
He wasn't famous.
No, not at all. He was just a guy starting his career, but I never forgot how supportive he was. And I have really tried to be supportive of anybody that I meet, that I care about, to whatever their goals are. I've always gone out of my way to offer a kind word or do something supportive. And I never forgot how far that went for me. So it was, when I look back at my entire college career, that was one of the things that when I got my degree really lasted for me. A small thing like that's amazing how, if you put yourself out and help somebody, just even a little bit, that can change their entire outlook.
For sure.
So anyway, so I graduated from NYU and I didn't know what to do. So I went to Europe. I started hitchhiking on sailboats. I was just working on these like luxurious sailing yachts through the Mediterranean, England, France, Africa, out to the Canary Islands. And really, it was quite amazing. I was like dirt poor.
How old were you at this point?
I was like 20,
20?
21, 22, and I had no money at all. And I remember that when you work for these rich people, they send you into town to do stuff and they just hand you money and you bring back the stuff that they want and you give them the money. They go, hold on to the money. And I remember like all the time, I had nothing but cut off jeans. And every now and then I'd be opening the pockets of my jeans and I'd find like wads of cash in there. And I got, wow, I don't even have a job really, but I get this money because they didn't want the money. It's just changed of dollars, $10, $20. It just kept refilling itself like Social Security, which I want to talk to you about later on. So it was great. It was great. So anyway, that happened for about 3 years. And I remember sitting on a dock where was I? Somewhere in Portugal. No, I'm sorry. It was in the Canary Islands. Yeah. Grand Canary Island. And thinking about, gee, I could do this for the rest of my life. There are a lot of people who start working on sailboats and it's such a beautiful life. It's so clean and
peaceful.
Oh, it's just when you're out on the sea, which just, you get covered with salt. You don't even need to take a shower because you've got like a layer of salt and you're always fresh. And it's crazy. I thought I could do this the rest of my life and I would really be happy doing it. And I thought, no, I've got some drive and I really need to get back and put myself to the test. I managed to get some money. I got a ticket back to New York, which I was familiar with. And that's when I started driving a cab for a couple of years because that's the professional Ellis Island of everybody that comes to New York. You don't know anybody, you don't have any, you can pretty much get a job driving a cab. No GPS. Remember maps? How horrible maps were?
Oh, geez.
Remember
you mean the atlas? Like
anything. Remember relying on maps or directions? Oh, yeah, it's easy. You go a mile this way and you're going to take that left at the big tree. And go, oh my God. You start driving, you go, I forgot everything.
I remember going to the beach as a child. I grew up in West Virginia. Myrtle Beach was a thing. It was like 8 hours away. And I remember my dad and mom getting this half the car, they're drawing on it.
It's wow.
Now you're like, what the
young people now that don't remember the like absolute terror of being late to go someplace and like having to rely on a map that you like really has practically no significance in your life. So I did that for a couple of years. It was a great experience. I learned a lot. You learn all about human nature driving a cab because you've got this, it almost do a television show about the people that come in and out of your cab.
Everybody's different.
Oh, I remember my very first day, I was in front of Bloomingdale's and this wealthy, snooty woman got in the back. And it was my second fare of the day, my first day. And you have to do some bookkeeping. And she gets in the back and I'm doing my bookkeeping from the last ride. So she goes, let's go. And I go, I said, oh, excuse me, ma'am, we're going. I just need to fill out some things. She goes, I don't care what you have to fill out. She starts stamping on the floor. She says, let's go. And I'm going like, wow, this is really bothering me. And so she was very insistent and very rude. And I just turned around to her and I couldn't believe, because I'm not this type of person at all. I just turned around to her and I said, ma'am, this car is going nowhere with you in it. So you can either stomp your foot there or you could get out and find another cab. And she blew up and she left. Anyway, I prized the hell out of myself because I'm a gentle person with other people. I don't want to get people angry or anything like that. But man, she pushed the button. Anyway, so that was a good learning experience for me because I didn't know you could do those kinds of things and succeed.
I think in New York, it's better. I think New Yorkers, they have this tough outer shell, but then when they figure out that all day in New York, it's a few. And if you take that, you're screwed. They'll just run over you. But if you look back and you say, "I'll screw you too," they're like your best friend.
My favorite story about New Yorkers is a guy's walking down the street and he's walking towards a guy who's a New Yorker. And he goes to the guy, he says, I really need your help. And the New Yorker goes, what do you mean? Who are you? And the guy goes, no, I need some help. And the guy goes, well, what do you need? And the guy goes, you know what I need? I need you to cut off your arm. And the New Yorker goes, what do you mean you need me to cut off my arm? What are you talking about? The guy goes, I really need you to do that. And the New Yorker goes, all right, I'm going to do it, but you better really fucking need it. And that is exactly what New Yorkers are all about. When there's a crisis, think of 9/11 or think of anything. When you're in New York, you're never alone. People think they're cold and people are cold or standoffish. But when you need somebody, there is nothing like a New Yorker to give you a powerful, take your back and give you some protection. Help you out. So anyway, I love New York. New York is much easier to live in than it is to visit because if you're visiting, your filtration system isn't set yet. And there's so much input, your brain wants to explode every day. But once you get your routine down, it's a lovely place to live because it's got a lot to offer. But anyway, So I didn't have a job. I had an education, but I didn't have a job. And I found a job in a small publisher, and I was just like working on stupid stuff. And I remembered that the art director, we used to see portfolios and everything like that. Designers and illustrators would come in and bring their work for inclusion at the work they were doing at the publisher, excuse me. And I was thinking like, hey, that looked cool. Wonder what's in those portfolios. I had no idea. And so after a while, I learned how creative work works. I had basic knowledge of art and things like that. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a designer, even though I didn't have any real training in that. And I started going at night to the Donnell Art Library, which is its own building, part of the New York City Public Library, dedicated strictly to art design and architecture and those kinds of things. And I started studying design, teaching myself. And I can tell you that I probably have looked at every design book in that library at least once, and I got obsessed with it. I thought, this is great. You're working with these tools like typography, color, form, and all these things. I thought, this really appeals to me. I found something that I find really attractive to my brain. And so I thought, okay, I need a portfolio, obviously, because I remembered that people are bringing portfolios in to show the art director. And the art director says, yeah, I'll hire you to do this illustration or these layouts or whatever. And during this period, I kept seeing the name Louis Dorfman. All right. And who's Louis Dorfman? Louis Dorfman was the creative genius behind CBS, which was considered the Tiffany of networks and really the Tiffany of corporate design. There were people all over the world that wanted to come and work for CBS. It was really the castle on the hill, and they only had the best people working there. They had the best budgets, and they hired the best architects. All the furniture at CBS was by Charles Eames and Florence Knoll and all of these famous people. And I kept seeing his name, and being the kind of person I am, I kept thinking like, got to work for this guy. I was very naive at the time because top graduates from Yale Design School and all kinds of places from all over the world wanted to come and work at CBS because they were famous for what they did in terms of corporate communications and identities and everything they did on air. And so I thought, obviously I need a portfolio. So I put together a portfolio. Naive little me puts together a portfolio. And I thought, this is okay. Looks pretty good. I had no ideas. Had no real samples of any work that was ever produced. Everything was fake. Here's a letterhead. Here's a brochure. Here's a this, here's a that, the things people were using those days. So I faked it on paper, and I bought a little portfolio thing with handles and had plastic sleeves. And I thought, hey, now I have a portfolio. So I thought, what am I going to do? I'm going to CBS because they're going to want to see this.
Where else would I go?
There was no other, in my mind, there was no other place, Matt. There was no other place. So in those days, there wasn't building security. I go to the lobby. Which floor is Lou Dorsman's office on? They go, oh, he's on what? I was on 27. He's on 26. And so I go 26th floor, and I'm walking around with my portfolio. Which way is Lou Dorsman's office? I go, hey, down in the corner over there. I go down in the corner, and the secretary's sitting out there. She had this beautiful array of antique microphones that all said CBS from 20s on. It was beautiful, really. And so I said, hi. And she goes, hello, can I help you? And I said, I came here to show Lou Dorsman my portfolio. And she said, oh, okay, who are you? And I said, I'm looking for a design position. She goes, oh, really? Okay. And she said, well, you can drop your portfolio off. And I said, could I just show it to him personally?
Can we just get
I
this
really
out
want to
right
drop
now,
it off. And she goes, I'm sorry, but you have to drop it off. And I said, where do I drop it off? And she motions over to the side of her office here. She goes, right there. Matt, literally, there were 50 to 60 portfolios lined up with each other. She said, I'll just put it in that stack and he'll look at it when he gets to it. And I just looked at it. It was like looking into like a starry sky with a million stars at night. It's like, where's my star going to fit?
I'm not choosing me out of all.
I mean, I'm just looking at it going, that's not possible. So anyway, I said, I don't know. And so she was looking at me like, you must be crazy, or I feel sorry for you or something like that, because I wasn't accepting that situation. And I said, do you have any suggestions? She goes, you could go downstairs and talk to Mr. David November, who is in charge of network advertising. I go, I don't know if I want to do that or not. She goes, and so I said, okay, I'll do that. So I go downstairs to 26 and I look for David November's office, and he wasn't in. Found he was in the corner office right below Lou Dorsman's office because he's another bigwig, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking around, and so I walked into his office. I put my portfolio on his chair. I took one of his Post-it notes and I wrote him a note. I said, dear Mr. November, dropping off my portfolio for your review. I'll call you in a day or two. And
I'll call you. I'm not waiting on your
no,
ass to call
exactly.
me.
So I was young and naive, but I had some kind of natural intelligence
Yeah.
to manage these kinds of things. And so I put it there and I called him like 2 days later and I said, I got him on the phone. These were days when you could do those kinds of things. And he said, I said, did you see my portfolio? And he said, yes, I did, John. About like that. And I said, what did you think? He goes, I don't know. I don't know if you're quite the kind of person that we're looking for, meaning like you have no experience. Subtext, you have no experience at all. Why are you wasting my time? You need to go out and get some work and prove yourself before you come back here ever.
Yes.
And so I said, oh no, I know I could fit in nicely. He goes, I don't really know. I don't know. And so I said, I got off the phone and I wrote him a letter. I actually made a letterhead. I just like a stamp of a seal from Homs, Syria. HOMS is my last name. It has the second largest city in Syria is named HOMS. I'm not exactly sure what the connection is. It might be from the Crusaders going to Spain because my grandfather was Spanish.
Yeah.
And so I made a stamp and on my name and all this. I wrote him a letter. It said, Dear Mr. November, thank you for reviewing my portfolio. I know I can be a real asset at CBS. I said, the only way for me to prove it is for you to give me a chance. Signed, me. Okay. So I sent him the letter. I waited 2 days, 2 or 3 days, whatever. And I called him up and I said, hi, Mr. November, John Holmes. Did you get my letter? He said, yes, John, I got your letter. I said, what did you think? Obviously, he didn't think anything else, you know? And so I said, okay, I'm going to come in and pick up my portfolio. And on my way up, I saw in the elevator bank, I saw the job listings and I noticed that they had a position in network advertising for an art director. You don't start at art director, you end at art director. And so when I went to get my portfolio, he was there and I said, what did you think? And he goes, no. And I said, on the way up here, I actually saw that you guys are looking for an art director. And
Just totally.
I know, and I'm not listening to you. Listen to me. Don't listen to yourself. And so he goes, John, these are people who have a lot of experience. They have very important jobs here. I said, I know I could work. I know I could work myself into that. And he's like looking at me like, maybe is he insane or is he like legit?
Yeah.
And so
He either has big balls.
I said, Lou Dorfman's office sent me down here. Like that he did in a sense. Lou Dorfman was like the boss of bosses there.
Yeah.
And he goes, really? And I said, they sent me, that's how I got to you. And he's thinking, oh, he thinks they were probably, he's thought, well, they were just trying to get rid of you, but you're trying to use that to ingratiate yourself to me. And so I said, I know you're looking for art. He goes, oh, John, why don't you do this? He said, why don't you come in and bring your portfolio and show it to my director of production, Janess. And so I said, oh yeah, of course I'll do that. He says, why don't you come in tomorrow at about 7? I never get up at 7 o'clock in the morning because I was working as a taxi driver. I was going to bed at 4 o'clock when it was just crazy. I had a terrible schedule. And so I said, fine. So I come in the next day and I meet Janess and she looks like she just got out of bed. And I thought, oh no, this is not going to go well. She's like groping for her coffee on her desk. And like I put my portfolio down. She was like, just got out of bed. Like, oh no, this can't be the end of all of this.
Ask you the coffee before coming.
Yeah. And so she flipped through my portfolio and my hair was just blowing. It was so fast. She goes, there's nothing in this portfolio that shows me that you're capable of doing the work here. I said, oh no, I know I can do it. And it went on and on. She goes, like everybody else up there was like, I got to get rid of this guy. So she said, I'll tell you what. She said, I didn't even have a portfolio. I just had drawings. I didn't have a portfolio. It was, I don't know. She took pity on me. And so she said, okay, you can come in tomorrow and we'll give you a try. I'm going, fantastic. So I come in the next day. I knew nothing. She says, here's 2 ads that need to be done for TV Guide or something like that. And and they need to be done in a week. And so, Matt, I swear to you, at 12 o'clock at night, the CBS building was dark except for one light up on the 26th floor. And that was me trying to figure out something that ultimately took me like 10 minutes to do, took me 10 hours to do. And she would come in and look over my shoulder during the day. She goes, if you put the knife here and to move the type over here, you won't have to color it in because it's dark paper already. I'm going, oh,
she's trying to help you.
Very valuable information. But like, this is absolutely, it's less than 101. It's like 99. It's designed 50 even. And so the week goes by and I couldn't sleep because my neck was so stiff. Every night I was up there like trying to make it happen. I felt like dead man walking when I walked to her office to show her the work. I really felt like I was walking to the gas chamber. I thought this is the end of my life. So I get in there, she looks at me, she goes, I'll tell you what, why don't you come back next week? Like this was Friday, come back next week. And so I ended up being there for the next 9 years.
Wow.
And I became an art director.
You did become the art director.
Yeah, and I'd never met Lou Dorsman, but after I'd been there about a week, I was down on 26th where his office was, and I was in the men's room peeing at the stall. And so I'm just there peeing, and some guy walks up and he starts peeing, and the guy just looks over and goes, "Hey, how you doing?" And I looked over, and it was Lou Dorsman.
You were peeing beside Lou.
And that's how I met Lou Dorsman. That's how I ultimately met Lou Dorsman. Anyway, that was my career at CBS. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
No, I think it's important for people to hear that. To me, that's a hell of a story of persistence, right?
Not checking no for an answer. And it served me well because many years forward, I had my own design firm. And not only was I creative director, but I was also responsible for sales. And I obviously had people saying to me like, "John, I've never had people that are more persistent than you, but do it in such a nice way that I really want more of it." Because they usually want to say, "Get lost, don't bother me anymore." But I just had a manner, a way of doing it nicely, and people would accept it. But you have to know that people, just because you're trying to sell something, people maybe don't necessarily need it at that moment. So you have to remember that you have to make a good impression and stay with that, because they might have another vendor or they might have a boss that is controlling their things. But if they remember you nicely, I can't tell you how many times people called me up a year later saying, "John, you know what? I can work with you now. I couldn't work with you back then because of all these things." And so my persistence at CBS, you should never burn a bridge. If you're in sales, you never huff out and you never go, "Oh, I can't work with those people," because you never know why at that moment you're not working with them. Because at least more than half the time people came back to me and said, "I'm ready to work with you now. I like you and I couldn't do it before."
Yeah, I say it all the time. I know you and I've talked about it a little bit, especially in the furniture business. It was definitely a relationship business, and
all business is a relationship business.
No question, in my mind, my strongest asset personally is building long-term relationships,
and you're good at it.
I have people friends and stuff, and they tell me, "Oh man, you're such a great salesman," and all this stuff, and I'm like, I still to this day, years later, I make incredible money in the furniture business and other things. I still to this day don't see myself as a salesman. I see myself as a long-term relationship builder.
Absolutely, Matt.
That builds relationships, and then people end up buying from me.
It's part of your magic. This is part of your magic. People like you immediately because you focus on them.
I focus on the friendship. I'm not, even in the furniture business, I think when I look back on it again, I was thinking about this.
You're not trying to position yourself. You really care about, do I like this person? Do we have something that is worth building on?
Yeah. I think for me, it just is a little bit annoying that I know that I'm a genuine person and I'm trying to build a relationship and build trust with this specific person. And in the beginning, they don't want anything to do with me. So for me, it's a little bit, it bothers me that they don't want anything to do with me first. And then secondly, it's a game. It becomes a game like, look, you don't want to talk to me today, but 6 months from now. And so you just keep that going. And then eventually those people just end up buying from you. I'm not selling anything.
I term it for myself as I like to find the door into you. It's like maybe you're closed right now, but there's some way that we're going to connect because we're both reasonable people. We're both nice people. We don't need each other right now, but I know that as human beings, there's some connection that we have, and everybody's different, but there are similarities. And so I want to find that, and I find that fascinating.
I still talk to old people or old customers in the furniture business all the time.
You do? Wow.
Clients. I've been out of that business since 2016, 8 years. I can pick up the phone and call my old clients.
Isn't that nice?
On a dime, and then some of them call me.
Yeah.
And no,
That's
I think
really
I'm not in the
You have to
sales.
cherish that.
I'm not in the sales game. I think that the word sales can have a negative connotation, but if it's done correctly, it's probably the most beautiful.
Well, you're providing something that people need. It's not to say that nobody in the world needs furniture and you have to force on. Basically, everybody in the world needs furniture.
That's right.
And you probably have a product that's absolutely perfect for them. You just have to find where their connection is.
That's right. So yeah, we're definitely similar in that way.
Yeah, no, I love sales.
Relationships.
I started a design firm, my first design firm, with 2 people from CBS after I left. And we got up to, we left, we rented a little space in New York City, and we all got up there and we set up the studio and we said, okay, where's the work coming from? And one of my partners said, "Oh, I'm not going out there." And I said, "What?" And my other partner goes, "No, just give me the work, put it in a slot and let me do the work." And I'm looking at these people going, wait, we spent whatever money we had. We set up an office, and who's going to go out and get the work? We have nothing if we don't have that. And so I was terrified. I realized at that moment, oh my God, it's me or that, or we're out of business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went and did it. And I remember I was terrified of meeting new people. And I remember I used to have really sweaty palms, and I would sit and I would go to meet with these directors of marketing and presidents of companies and stuff like that to talk to them about their marketing. And this time I did have a portfolio because I had a beautiful portfolio of very elegant, beautiful CBS samples and other things that I had done freelance. But I remember I was so nervous to be on my own. And I was realizing all the time that if I didn't bring in the work, my company was out of business.
Sure.
And what would I do? And I remember I was so nervous that I had this thing going where I would sit in the lobby, and when I would see the shadow of the person coming out from the elevator bank, I would wipe my hands on my pants or my socks quickly because I was like a waterfall of nervousness. And I would stick my hand out so quickly and shake their hand and then pull it back, because if it sat there for a second and a half, it would be like, it would be like a sponge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how I started. And somebody gave me a really good piece of advice that somebody else might be able to benefit from. When I was like very young, and one guy, I guess they all sensed it, because the people I was calling at the time, these were high professionals, 45, 50, 60, 70 years old. These are people who have been in business in New York for a long time. And one guy goes to me, he goes, John, don't worry about it. Your work is really good. And you shouldn't be nervous about it. I'm thinking, am I nervous? Do I look nervous? I'm probably terrified in front of him. And he goes, frankly, don't try to hide your inexperience or anything like that. He said, in a way, it's charming because it's honest, and people know that you're not trying to like fool them in any way. He said, it can be something that people want to help you. And in that case,
Yeah.
you understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to be on your level, like a 60-year-old vice president of marketing of a company, because I'm thinking I'm trying to do that. And they're looking at me like, this is a kid, but he's smart and he's sincere and he has nice work. And you know what? When that person said it to me, I just let it all relax. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life, because I would go up and I would not try to be something that I'm not.
For sure. No, and I have a great story about that too. It's in some ways similar. When I got into the furniture business, by the way, I knew nothing about furniture. This guy literally called me on the phone. He told me what he'd pay me. And he said, the only territory that I have open is Minneapolis. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, Minneapolis? I don't want to go to Minneapolis. It's cold up there, man. But I was like, all right, this sounds like something I'd like to do, right? You're really independent. You can make your own schedule, do whatever the hell you want, as long as you're selling something. And he calls me up. He's living in St. Louis at the time. He was the sales manager in the Midwest. And we had a mutual friend. And he says to me, where do you live? I need to come interview you. And I'm like, I live in West Virginia. And he goes, no, I ain't coming to fucking West Virginia, dude. I'll be in Tupelo, Mississippi in 2 weeks. Meet me in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, he was like, looking at West Virginia, I ain't going to that shithole. You can meet me. That's what he was thinking. That was like the attitude he gave me.
Really?
Yeah, because he had never really been there, right?
Okay.
He didn't know.
West Virginia's a beautiful state.
West Virginia's beautiful, great people, everything's great. But that's the attitude that he gave me. Like, coming to West Virginia, right? You're going to come to Tupelo, Mississippi.
Okay.
I don't know if you've been to Tupelo, Mississippi, but it's not any better.
No, I'm sure it's not. But I understand he's selling and you're buying, in a sense.
Of course. I don't have a choice. But
right. I got to go. And he wants to see that you get up and get yourself dressed up and drive out to see him. That's your interview right there.
Exactly. So I was like 22 years old, and loaded up my car in West Virginia at the time. And I told my mom, I said, I'm going to Tupelo, Mississippi. She said, for what? And I was like, a job interview.
Wow.
It was like 14 or 16 hours that Tupelo's miserable.
Wow, yeah.
But I was so excited to go down there and interview. I thought, I'm going to go to Tupelo, Mississippi. And I get down there, and it was no nicer.
Of course not.
Than where I grew up in West Virginia. But nonetheless, I roll up and I'm in a suit, like a nice suit. I roll in, and this dude's in a plain white t-shirt that he looked like he just got it out of I don't know. It's like he just got it out of the bag. Jeans and a white t-shirt and sneakers on.
Was he much older than you were?
No, he was probably about 32 or 34 at the time.
Like 10 or 12 years older
But
than
he
you?
was real established. This guy was hands down one of the best. And
he actually didn't even have to dress up. He just I always admired people. I always heard that, that person doesn't even have a business card. So this is the same kind of thing. People have worked hard, they've established themselves, and people come to them at that point.
Exactly. He had
I always admired that.
Great reputation. I'm come up under this guy, one of the best salesmen I've ever met. Great guy. But he says, I got a job in Minneapolis for you. And really terrible salary that he gave me to go out there. It was really god awful.
Hey,
it was just that I said, yeah, I didn't have anything else. It was either zero or that. So I drive back to West Virginia, 14 hours. He didn't even give me the job on the spot, by the way. Yeah. If he's listening, Dick. I know him really well, so I'm allowed to say that. Anyway, so yeah, he doesn't give me the job on the spot. And I dropped back 14 hours not knowing how that interview went at all. And I'm like a 22-year-old kid, nervous. And it was like 3 days later, and he calls me on the phone and he's, yeah, I guess if you're willing to drive all the way to Tupelo, Mississippi, you can have the job. And so then I had to pack my bags and go to Minneapolis, Minnesota, 18 or 24. It was all the way out.
That's serious road work.
All the way out to Minneapolis and worked 3 years out there. But nonetheless, he sends me this big, huge stack of photos, big lithos. I knew nothing about furniture. And I said, what am I going to do with these? There's 400 or 500 lithos.
Like product pictures?
Big, huge, product photos.
Okay.
Lithographic, these massive, glossy photos. And I'm like, what am I going to do with all this? Big stack of photos. And he says, I'm going to give you the top 5 in each category. Don't worry about the rest. Throw them in the back of your car. Just take these 5 in every category.
The product.
These 5 products.
Okay.
Bedroom category, living room category, all these different categories. I'll give you the top 5 sellers in every category. In the beginning, you're just going to go in. These are the 5 in each category you're going to concentrate on. Don't pull any other pictures out until everyone's buying those. I was like, I got this wind train. And so I go to Redwood Falls, Minnesota, which is like, I don't know, 2 hours or 3 hours outside of Minneapolis. I can't remember. To this guy that had this beautiful store. He was like the number 1 guy in Redwood Falls, Minnesota. And I walk in, we had this bedroom suit that was black and cherry wood. And then the inside of the headboard and the footboard, they had cherry wood with these lights in the headboard and shine on it and it pop really nicely. But I'd seen cherry wood in the past, didn't really understand it or know what it was, but this was like orange. It was like the worst looking cherry wood that I've ever seen in my life. It was like, I didn't know it was cherry. So I'm sitting down the presentation with this guy that was like 60 years old. I'm 22. I'm trying to come up with a pitch for this product. And I'm like, man, he said, tell me about this group. Man, it's just one of our best sellers, hands down. The last 6 months, it's been the best seller. I'm like, there's lights in the headboard. And like, when you turn the lights on, the orange in the headboard just pops. It's really beautiful. Something like that. Or something along those lines. And he looks at me and he goes, Matt, he goes, I trust you. And I do believe that this is one of your best bedroom suits because I happen to know that this would definitely sell in my store. But I'm going to do you this huge favor.
I can't wait.
The orange in the headboard is cherry wood. And once you leave my store, I don't want you to tell anyone else that this is orange because there's no way you're going to sell one.
Oh, that's interesting. Funny, when you were telling me to start things like orange is such a specific color. That's something you either love or hate. Most people are not going to like the idea of orange in their bedroom.
This was the worst looking thing
How
I've ever
brilliant.
seen. We sold so many of them, but it had this big orange. It looked like a pumpkin. It was awful. But it's
you could have said something like it brings out the natural grain in the cherry wood, which illuminates the bedroom in a beautiful way.
And I probably did figure that out.
I'm sure
a
you
month
did.
later, but
that's a
that
funny
was like
story.
my 3rd day ever.
What a nice guy. Yeah. Did he end up buying from you?
Oh yeah, he bought it and he ordered it every week, every month. He sold the heck out of it. He did great with it.
What a great story.
But he's like, don't ever tell anyone else that this is an orange.
Yeah.
So he felt sorry for me and bought from me anyway.
I love your story because I just think people need to just cross the line and get out there and put themselves out. It's like a lot of people are like afraid to take that step because they feel they're going to get squashed by experience or power or something like that. But that's like my CBS story. The guy saw you as somebody who was earnest about what you were doing. And he said, I like you. I'm going to buy from this guy and I'm going to help him, get to the next level with his sales. I think it's a great story.
And he did. Yeah, it was good. But it was just definitely him lending a hand and saying, I know that a lot of people would have just laughed at me and never bought it because they're like, I'm not buying this orange bedroom
I don't
suit,
think it's about them. I think it's about you. I think maybe it's our personality that we can connect. We have some way to connect with people because I don't know why, because I don't know.
I think it's authenticity.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only answer.
Yeah. I'm not trying to jerk you around.
Yeah. It's authenticity.
I'm not coming in thinking I'm better than you or I know better or something like that. I'm here to do the job and great.
Yeah. I'm here to do what I say I'm going to do. And that's it. At the end
awesome.
of the day.
That's a great story.
I want to hear a little bit about quickly how you decided to move to South America.
Oh yeah. Great idea. I'd love to talk about it because moving to South America was a really great decision for me. I had a very happy and successful business in the United States, a marketing and strategic branding firm. And we were very well known for the quality of our work. but we had very important clients, and it's very stressful work. It's very gratifying, but there's no error. There's no room for error. You don't make a mistake. You don't deliver a branding platform or a series of marketing materials that has any possibility of failing. It's just one of those things that it just doesn't happen. So there's a lot of pressure to do it well and do it right. I'm sorry, not well. It wasn't good enough. It has to be 100% right, because a lot of our clients are spending millions of dollars building brands, building products, building brands for those products, and communicating those products and services to people all over the world. And you have to understand the cultures. You have to understand everything. It's very stressful. We just got to the point, my partner and I, where it was just enough. We had enough. We were at a point where we could consider moving on. And I wasn't ready to move on because I had my identity wrapped up in that business. And I thought, if I don't have this business, I have nothing, which is it's an emotional nightmare for me at the time.
It's almost like you didn't even exist. You were
Matt, that's
one of
exactly what I was feeling. I thought I'd be dangling in space.
Mhm.
And my partner was ready to go. And my partner was nice. I talked to my partner about this. And he was nice enough to say, okay, well, I'll do it for another year. I thought, okay, I've got a year to get my brain straight on this. And I thought it was a very generous thing for this person to do because they were ready to go.
Mhm.
And so we did it, and time came and I did it. We did it. We closed the business. We couldn't sell the business because we were the business. We had great client lists. We had great employees. We had a beautiful office and everything. We had renovated a beautiful mid-century building and put the most beautiful furniture. And
So the business essentially has no value without you.
it doesn't really.
So you couldn't sell it. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody said, why don't you sell your business? And I floated that with a couple of my clients. They go, who's coming to the meetings? I go, well, whoops, we'll have somebody. And they go, John, that's not going to work for us. And so anyway, fast forward, we closed the business. I was sitting there thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I have this thing where I think that you start in a place, and as a young person, you go out, you do a lot of testing, and you go places and you do things that at some point you want to go back to your roots in a way. And I did have that South American history.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Florida, where there were a lot of South Americans, not like it is today. There were a lot of South Americans, but today it's Latino. It's like Miami is really the capital of South America
sure.
now. But in those days it wasn't. But there were plenty of Latinos living there because it was so close. And my parents' friends and workmates and stuff like that were all Latinos. And because my father was in charge of the Latin American division, Pan American World Airways, so those people were coming in now. And I just remembered having those connections. I remember those people. I remember how much I liked them and how fun they were. And they had names like Mario Martinez and Pepe Proenza. Those are actual people. And they'd come over for parties, and they knew how to have a good time. They weren't sitting around, they were dancing and conga lines, and they were doing stuff like that. And I thought, feels about right. And so through a series of events, I decided to go to Colombia, which is where we are now. And I thought, I wanted to jump ship primarily because I was really tired of the corporateocracy.
Mhm.
I felt like the corporations in the United States had like their hands in every one of my pockets, gouging out every penny they could. And I also didn't really like the sense of like governmental oversight in my life. For instance, a small example, and you may or may not agree with this, but I recognize the value of wearing a seatbelt while you're in a car, but I don't really want somebody to tell me you have to put on a seatbelt or you're going to get a ticket. It's going to cost you $200 if you don't put on that seatbelt. I'm not okay with that. I'm just not okay with that. Those kinds of laws. And if you start to look around, those laws are everywhere in the United States. And it starts to feel less like a country and more like one huge corporation.
Yeah, no, I think I heard something the other day. This guy said, and he's an American guy. He said, it's the land of the free, but we have more people in jail than anywhere else in the world.
That's a fact.
And it is for stupid stuff, right? Yeah, I get it. If somebody's murdered, if somebody's doing a serious crime, absolutely stick them in jail. I'm all about that.
Yeah.
But you have guys in jail that are in jail right now
For having one marijuana cigarette, which of course is legal now.
And they had a
Are those
marijuana
people
cigarette
getting
30
out?
years ago, and they're still in.
Are those people getting out of jail like immediately? I hope so.
It's one of the things that
It's
I know
terrible.
when I'm back in the States.
I want to say that honestly, people who don't know about Colombia or other places. I feel I have more liberty here than I ever did there. I feel like I can do as long as I'm not hurting anybody or giving anybody a problem of any sort.
Everyone stays out of your way.
Everybody stays out of your way. And it's a great sense of liberty. And I'll tell you the honest truth. All of my life, I've been hearing like people ask another person, are you happy? And people going, yeah, I'm happy. I wonder why somebody's happy. Maybe because they got like a Porsche or they bought like a really expensive handbag, and then when the glow of that work wears off, what do you do? Do you get like a new Porsche or like an Armani suit or something like that?
30 days later, are you still
Yeah, because
happy?
it's still valid. But I remember being here a number of years ago, sitting on my balcony overlooking this beautiful city. And I almost cried. I thought, for the first time, I can honestly say to myself, I am happy
Mhm,
and I'm not like manufacturing that thought and just applying that label to me.
mhm.
I am actually happy. I'd never experienced that in my life.
Yep.
And there I the experience it here. And I thought, wow, that is like a kick in the head. Basically, why didn't I feel that before?
Mm.
But you look back on the United States, and I don't want to put it down because I love the country. It was extremely good to me. I love everybody there. I love it. I go back and my family's there and all of that. But I feel like I have gone to a higher level of existence here. This is not perfect. There are many problems here. That people aren't on time. Well, it just goes on and on. You have to really reorder your life. But I don't feel like I'm on the hamster wheel
Yeah.
like I was in the United States. Believe me, the hamster wheel was good to me.
Yeah, me
I
too.
like the hamster wheel was good. I'm a hard worker. I love getting up in the morning, going to work and accomplishing things. But that's the MO of the culture in the United States. It's like
That's all it is.
you produce until the day you die, and then who's going to take your place? Oh my God, you want to take 2 weeks off together? Oh, can you just take 1 week now and then take another week in the fall? Oh, what am I going to do? Sit at home and resod my lawn or something like that? Anyway,
Yeah,
and
no,
so when I took a look here, there were certain things I didn't know a lot of these things, but I did do a financial analysis, and I thought my money's going to go further there. Let me give it a try.
you told me a story about you did all these spreadsheets, because
Oh,
I know this is you're analytical about these things, especially
I
finances.
could have been an accountant.
But you did all these spreadsheets, like worried about
Down to the
coming here.
detail. Down to the detail. I knew what it cost to take a bus. I knew what it
And
took.
you've probably never taken a bus since you've been here.
I have not. I honestly have never been on a bus here,
For some reason, you should go.
but I had to know. I had to know what like the
In case I need a
financial.
bus, I need to
What
know
the,
if I
well,
can
I know what the
13 cents
financial.
cost
I
to
need.
go.
I no, I wanted to find out what the financial landscape is here. I needed the best I could put myself into it. So yeah, I did do intensive spreadsheets.
The bus now's gone up. It's really expensive.
Everything's gone
like
up
around
here.
80.
The pandemic has caused prices to go up, but yeah.
7 years ago when you came, it was probably 35 cents.
So are you asking me where I went from my spreadsheets? Is that what you're asking?
No,
Because
I remember you telling me a story one night about you spent
copious,
months or weeks doing these
copious
detailed
spreadsheets. I love
and
working
then,
with Excel.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what you told me was you had this all figured out and you're like, okay, now I can make the moves. And then you landed here and you're like, oh my God, I was off. You had
No, yeah,
guessed high.
yeah, almost that, Matt. There's a little program that I really like. It's an application. What is it called? I think it's called MoneyBook, and it's made in Germany. You can get it on the iPhone, and I think you can also get it on Android. And I would get here, and I would literally make a note of every single thing that I bought. If I bought a bottle of sparkling water or something, everything would go in there, and it would give you like that information. You could look at it, give you charts and graphs and bar charts and line graphs of your spending, and you could put it, you choose categories for home, for eating, for transportation, all these things. And so I did that for a long time. And I just arrived to the point where like, oh my God, it's like, why am I doing this? What I thought would be my financial structure world here is not, even though I had the numbers and it seemed like I was going to make it, but not easily make it. For some reason, I made it so much better and I wasn't even trying.
So it was 10, 15% less than, or maybe less than what you
It was
expected.
20% less.
Than what you were-
And I had everything. I thought I had it. This is interesting because I thought I had everything programmed exactly. So where was it even cheaper? I don't know. It's like a cab ride here to most places is like $2.
Yeah.
And so was I overestimating cabs or food in the grocery store when I first came here for 100,000 pesos, which is 20
$25.
bucks right now you're walking out with two huge grocery bags. That's not the same. You're walking out with one grocery bag now, but it's still cheap.
Yeah.
But so somehow in a way that I thought I was doing such a careful analysis, it wasn't good enough, but it was definitely in my favor.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't to my detriment. I didn't get here and say, oh my God, it's more expensive than I thought. It was just the opposite.
So from a business perspective, I know that And I know you're retired in the States. You
Mhm.
told me that.
Mhm.
And one thing, have you done any business down here? I know a lot about the business landscape here. What are your opinions?
About doing business here?
Yeah, about doing business here. Have you invested here, or
No.
you've done some consulting, kind of freelance helping
I
people
I
out? Or,
still like to work with clients. I still like to help them with their branding. It's something I really enjoy doing. I'm good at. But I think one thing that you have to understand, at least let me say it for me, that when you come from your culture to another culture, you become an outsider. You're, and as they say here, extranjero. You're from another culture in another place. And if you go to set up a business here, you're doing it in their culture all of a sudden. And I don't think there's any way that you can understand the nuances of a whole nother culture. It may look the same. It's, oh, I want to open a bar or a restaurant or something like that. They have tables, napkins, drinks, and food. But the substructure behind that is nothing you would ever be able to understand, maybe in a lifetime.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm not a proponent of that. The USA is the money machine.
absolutely.
If you want to live outside the USA and you still want to make money, find a way to make money
Remotely, or
where there are people that your know your type of person, their culture, because it's always going to be, in my opinion, the best route to take. If you start to depend on people, say, for instance, here or another place, they're probably looking to take advantage of you because they know, and whether they're scheming or not, they know that you're from another place and you're not going to be able to understand their nuances. So they might just be predisposed to take from you
yeah, yeah,
in a way you
absolutely.
don't know, in the way that I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I think, as an investor, and I've had a couple of investors on the show that they've done well here. I personally just don't understand. I think this is a place that you'll live happier
Hmm.
if you set yourself up, like you said, in your home country, and then you come here and just enjoy
Hmm.
things, right? This is a fun place. It's a nice place with great people. Why stress
Mhm.
yourself out here?
One of the things that we've talked about, which I think is very valid, is like because this is considered the third world, but there are really exciting people and businesses here that would love to market products in the United States
Yeah.
because that's the market. They have no way,
To do that. No,
they have no vision of how to do that. And even if they tried, they would probably fail miserably because their culture is so different. So there are many opportunities within that paradigm.
yeah, I think probably you're right. Probably one of the easiest ways to come up with a business in Latin America is to find something here that we don't have at home or don't
As
have
well,
good
as
access
well.
to.
Yeah,
Help
as
them.
well. But in terms of starting a restaurant or a bar or something like that, I don't know about that.
I've never seen anyone win in Colombia by doing that, really. You do have some guys. There's some Americans here that have beautiful restaurants, but you talk to them and they're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week.
Yeah,
And
and
they're bringing
dealing
in $1,500 a month. You're like, what the hell are you doing wasting your time for?
yeah. The money thing, it just isn't the same.
It doesn't add up. And
I know that for a fact. I agree with you.
for me, it's even the real estate thing. And in many ways, I don't like bringing it up because I just have so many friends that have invested in real estate
Mhm.
here. But it just so happens that I've spent a lot of my life studying investments
Mhm.
and over the years read all the best investors in the States or the world over the years. And for me, it's if you want to come down to wherever,
Mm.
Medellin, Colombia, and you want to buy a lifestyle investment and spend 250, 3, 400,000, whatever it is on a lifestyle investment.
What do you mean by
Lifestyle
like-
meaning,
like
hey,
buying a
it's a
object?
place to go have a good time, right?
Oh,
If you
okay.
wanted to, if you're living in Kansas,
Mhm.
random example, but if you're living in Kansas and you're like, hey, I want a beach place in Cancun,
Mhm.
that's cool, right? Buy a beach place in Cancun if you have the extra money to make that happen.
Uh-huh.
But I think that once you start looking
And
at
do you
it
mean
as
rent it? Do you mean buy it?
no,
use it?
I'm saying lifestyle.
live there.
Well, yeah, of course. If you're not there, why not rent it and make some money?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I would personally look at that as a lifestyle investment, meaning I'm going to buy that place to have in Cancun just for fun, for me to be able to go whenever I want. And then, yeah, maybe I rent it, maybe I don't,
Mhm.
but it's for me and my family to go have a
Mhm.
good time. I'm not thinking about that as that being the investment that's going to change my life because
Right.
personally, I know people that have many investments in Medellin, and to me, it just doesn't make sense, man. If you're buying that lifestyle investment just to have fun, great.
Mhm.
But if you're buying 4 or 5, 6 real estate places
Mhm.
here, it's just
Well, it depends on how much money you have.
yeah,
Know?
that's right. That's right.
If you just have enough money to live, come to a place like this on a decent social security, and you can live very nicely.
Yeah, that's another thing I
You know,
wanted to.
but if you want to, if you can't sit still, basically, and you got to create a little chaos in your life, yeah, buy some real estate and rent it out. Maintaining real estate is no easier here than it is in the United States.
No, for sure. It's hard.
The things that you need to do and buy for it may be cheaper, but managing the people that are going to do it for you is 3 times harder. What do you want on your life?
Yeah, I think, and you would, if you're back there, you would say, I can just turn it over to a management company. And I think
You can
could
do that here,
potentially-
but you're still going to have a set of problems that
yeah,
maybe you don't want to have.
no, I agree.
There isn't the same level of responsibility here.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work out.
No, I agree. So in your opinion, I know you've hit on some of them, but if you were to highlight the top 4 or 5 things that make Medellin a special place to live.
Oh, yeah. There's so many. Let's put it this way. I think that is like a misleading question in the sense that you hear that kind of question a lot, but not divorced from that question is what's the downside? Because they literally go hand in hand. So let's just talk about it like from that point of view, because you can go on YouTube. There are a lot of videos about like why it's so great to be in a place, but they completely leave off the other part of it. And you think because you're applying those like 5 or 6 benefits to your life in the United States, because you live in the United States and you understand the entire culture within which those benefits exist. You think, oh yeah, okay, great. So I don't have those here. I'll find them there. But when you get there, wherever there is, there are things that like, I had no idea how complicated such and such is. So let's go back to your question. Your question is, what are the benefits? The weather here is remarkable. I am not somebody who likes winter. As a matter of fact, I was in the United States a week ago. It was 15 degrees. And when I tell cab drivers here that it was -5 degrees centigrade, they practically pass out. They can't even consider that. They can't even, they don't understand. Everything was frozen, everything, buildings, everything. So anyway, so the weather's great here. Highs usually of 82, 83 in a day. They're like crazy. I think it's so hot here. And then at night, it gets down to like about 65. It's that same way every single day. It rains almost every single afternoon for like an hour. So if you're leaving the house after 2 o'clock, you take a little umbrella with you because you're going to need it. You're going to duck into a cafe. You're going to have a coffee, or you're going to have a soda or something like that, or maybe a little dessert. And by the time you're done, rain is over. You go home that night. It usually rains in the evening again, about 8 or 9 o'clock. Weather, great. Can't say enough about the cost of living, because even on a modest Social Security, a person can live nicely here. And there are a lot of foreigners who live here, who have come here specifically because they do not have enough money to live in the United States. They cannot retire. There are a lot of people who, when they retire, they don't have enough money to do anything but sit at home and wait out their days.
And then they come here and they're not only living a better life than they've lived for 30 years, but they're saving some of what they have.
Yeah, but there are people here who are just making it. I know there are people from the United States here where they're like 3 guys living together in an apartment who have $700 a month Social Security, and they're pooling their money together. And in a certain way, they're better off here.
Yeah.
Because going to the grocery store is cheaper. If you have to take a cab, that's on the lowest end of the scale. And they do hopefully have a better life. But if you have more than that to spend, you can have a maid easily.
Yeah.
You have people doing all kinds of things for you, recognizing, I don't want to sound snobby or anything, but they recognize that you have a status and they go out of their way to be nice to you. And that's not something you get easily in the United States.
You don't get it at all.
It's an egalitarian society, but here, this is more of a colonial culture where, if somebody has a house and a car, they perceive you to be more wealthy than they are, they defer to you. And I don't really like that. But it's a fact. It happens.
For sure.
So there's that. Your money goes further. I don't know. What do you think? Those are the 2 big benefits for me.
I know one thing that we both have agreed on is for sure the healthcare system.
Oh, yes.
I think you've taken advantage of it more than I have, but I have my own
Do you see these spots all over me here?
Oh, yeah.
You know what this is? I was in the United States, and these are sun damage things. I came down here and I went to have my teeth cleaned because I have a fantastic dentist here. And he cleaned
that cost?
I'll tell you in a second. He cleaned my teeth and he saw a deep cavity in there, and he filled the cavity, and the entire bill was $68.
Cleaning and a cavity.
And he did a great job. And I was telling him, I have this rash that I got in a pool in the United States, and it's not going away. And I said, I wanted to go see the dermatologist. I asked the dermatologist when I could see him. They said in August, what month is this? This is the end of January. And I thought, I'm not waiting. So I told my dentist about it. He goes, I'll call him up right away, because he knew him. That's how I met the dermatologist in the first place. I had an appointment the next day at 8:30 in the morning. This is not unusual here. I went to the dermatologist, and I'd gone to a dermatologist in Connecticut, and they were like bumbling around trying to figure out what this was. And it was costing me a lot of money. They were giving me a lot of medications that just weren't doing anything. So this guy sat me down. He like took a biopsy. He said, no, we're taking a biopsy because this could be one of two things. And they both look the same, but they're both very different, blah, blah, blah. And he said, while you're here, we're going to remove all the sun damage on your body. I said, great, go ahead and do it. So that's what they use, liquid nitrogen. And the whole thing cost me $325,000, which is what, about
75, 85 bucks.
yeah. And it got and he's like dermatologist to the stars here. So there's that, having an operation next week on a little hernia in
Oh, you got this.
from working out in the gym too hard. And that's going to cost me like 1/10 of what it's going to cost me in the United States. And the surgeon who I have had dealings with before is one of the most well-known doctors here. And as a matter of fact, my dermatologist said, who's going to do your operation? I said, his name. He said, oh my God, that was one of my teachers. He said, he's fabulous. He's one of the top people in the city here. When you need drugs, they don't give you, they write it down, but you don't need a prescription.
Yeah,
You go to any pharmacy, and in fact, the United States, there's a pharmacy practically on every corner. They just give it to you. Whatever drug you need. I guess there might be some drugs that are like highly narcotic or dangerous, but you get it. And I had this little thing, this kind of itchy patch on my skin. And a lot of people here, they go to the pharmacist instead of going to the doctor because a pharmacist has practically
Almost the same thing.
almost has a medical degree. They know. And so I said, who's the pharmacist here? And this girl comes out, like girl, she's a woman, but she was about 27. And she's a really attractive looking person. I'm going like, is this a pharmacist? So I told her what I had. She goes, okay, I got it. She goes back and she gets me this little tube of stuff. She said 3 times per day. I said, fine. So I took it back. Problem solved.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times that I've had things go wrong and I just go to the pharmacy and then say, hey, here's what I got going on. They give you some medication. The next day you're good. And it completely skips the need to go see a doctor who's going to tell you the same exact thing.
I went to one doctor and I told him I didn't want to take any pills. And he said, no, that's fine. And so he prescribed to me medical grade cannabis oil. It's not you don't get high from it or anything like that. They actually do use it to treat people who are addicted to marijuana. And what it does is it removes the urge, but it helps them come off of that. And so he gave me the name. I went down to the drugstore and I got it. It cost me $138,000. And I was talking to him about it subsequently because he was following my progress. The importer was, and he said that same bottle in the United States cost $1,500. And I paid $138, which is $30.
Another thing that I indirectly hit on it, but one thing that I think is important, I know that we definitely share this thought, but are the conveniences of Colombia. You just mentioned it, right?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Man,
very
things
important.
like that, right?
Talk to me about that.
Go for it.
Home delivery is an art form here. You can't even imagine if you haven't experienced it, right? If you need cash, they'll bring you cash for whatever reason, even.
It's hard to communicate how convenient these services are until you've experienced it for yourself for a significant amount of time. I was telling some friends back in the States about Rappi, and when I'm in a country that doesn't have Rappi, John, I'm like,
I know.
What the hell am I going to do?
If it's 2:00 in the morning, you need an aspirin, it's going to be there in half an hour and it's going to cost you $2 to $3.
Rappi Turbo is 11, 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I tell people back in the States, I'm like, man, we have this delivery service here. It's called Rappi and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we have Uber Eats, we have Postmates. And I'm like,
nothing like it.
It doesn't touch it.
Nothing like it.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've been out and I've needed money. I don't have my ATM card because I don't carry all my cards with me. And all of a sudden I need money. So I hop on Rappi app, order money, and it brings it to wherever I am.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. The convenience of this country with everything.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's really one of the great benefits. I don't know if other countries have the same level of service. Do you know about that?
So Rappi's basically
they're everywhere
throughout most of Latin America.
Yeah.
But I've never been anywhere where it's as convenient as Colombia. Somebody just told me the other day that it's a Brazilian company. But I can.
No, is that a fact?
That's what someone told me. I
thought it was from Cali, but I don't know.
I also thought it was a Colombian company.
Okay.
But somebody corrected me the other day and said, no, it's definitely a Brazilian company.
How interesting.
And if that's the case,
makes sense.
They've really screwed it up in Brazil because I just spent 8 months in Brazil.
Oh.
And Brazil, it's super inconvenient. They don't have a whole lot of options. And as in Colombia, you just said it, they're at your house in 10 minutes, depending on what you order. And you have access to.
They actually put a clock on the application and it starts counting down from 12 from 12 minutes, and you can just see it count down, and the people are always there within 12 minutes. If you can order like a head of broccoli and a 6-pack of beer, and it's there in 12 minutes.
Yeah. And not only that, but again, you can order anything you want. You have Rappi Favor. I was Alejandro, actually, the personal trainer at the gym a few years back. I was at his place playing volleyball. He has an outdoor volleyball court over there. We're all playing volleyball, and we went down to the court, and he put his car keys and his wallet in my backpack. I left early and accidentally took his stuff back with me to my house. And he calls me up and says, "Dude, you got my wallet and my keys with you. Can you bring them back?" And it was like a 25-minute ride out to his place or something like that. And I just got on Rappi Favor, wrapped it up in a nice box. Rappi guy comes to my house and he picks up the package and takes it.
What did that cost you? Do you have any idea?
It was insignificant.
Like
Totally insignificant. I don't know. It was
10,000.
Like yeah, it was like 10 or 15,000 pesos for $4.
Yeah. Your time and your gasoline. And
it's certainly not worth me getting a cab, going 2 ways.
No, not at all.
And wasting
I know
time.
that's the thing. And I think that's a good point, because we have messenger services and stuff like that in the United States, but they're not nearly as inexpensive as things are here. You can afford to do just things you just wouldn't consider. You would rather get in your car and drive 20 minutes and come back to return something like that, just because we're not programmed that way. But here, you learn to reprogram yourself in a way that people are here to help you, and they're happy to help you. The average Colombian makes $1.2 million. That's the legal
$300.
That's the legal salary here
Per month.
So you give somebody, if somebody has the opportunity to make, say, a couple of dollars for a quick thing, that's money for them.
Yeah.
Because they're happy to make maybe $25 in a day.
Yeah, I think that's a big number here, right? That's 25. Let me ask you, what are your, where do you see yourself going in the future? Are you going to end up staying here, or?
Matt, it's a great question. I really don't know. Again, coming to Colombia has given me a sense of personal freedom.
Yeah.
I didn't have before. And that's for many reasons. I'm away from, family ties, which never have been necessarily like ties in a sense, but I'm far away. So I don't have that like right next to me. I tell you, one thing I have on the table here is where my family's located. It's a very beautiful place up in the Northeast, and there's a farm out there. And on the farm, there's an outbuilding, and one of the outbuildings is a really nice little apartment. And so and it has a garage, and it's inexpensive. And I was actually thinking of having that as a base maybe, and then just going up there and keeping my things there, but then spending a lot of my time in Latin America, because I don't think of the United States as fun for me anymore.
Yeah.
I have to say that. And I know that probably sounds really harsh, but I've been living in that culture forever. And one of the great things about being here is that you're confronted with new situations all the time, and it really keeps your mind active. And I like having to speak another language. I like meeting new people. I would say personally that not being in a rut is really like my goal. And I find if I were maybe back where I was before, I would slip back into a rut, and I feel like I would be wondering, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
And I don't really wonder about that so much here, because look, I've spent a number of years here, and I did get into a rut, and I learned through time and experiences that I don't want to be in a rut. So I have to make an effort to go other places, and going other places is not nearly as expensive here as it is in the United States.
For sure.
So I can get on a plane, and for $100 round trip, I can go to another city. I could spend a couple of days there just walking around. If I want to look at the parks, maybe go to a museum, meet somebody. Or if I want to I'd love to explore Brazil. You've spent a lot of time. I'd love to go see Brazil. I went to Argentina last year. That was pretty interesting. There are many places to go. So I'm in a place in the world which is unexplored for me. And so to answer your question, it makes sense for me to either I'll put down roots here, or I'll take advantage of that situation in the United States, which I haven't really committed to yet. I don't know, man.
The good thing is, man, you're retired.
Yes.
And you don't have to know.
That's right.
And do whatever the hell you want.
You have to remember that it's like when you're working and you're working life, you're always planning ahead because you have to, and that's fine. I believe in planning ahead, not worrying ahead. That when you reach my status here, every day is its own thing, and I can choose to do today what I want to do. And if I can appreciate my surroundings and what I have and what I don't have, and tomorrow I'll do something else.
That said, man,
Hey,
I think this has been absolutely incredible.
so
and
nice.
I
I
sincerely
enjoyed talking to
appreciate
you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks so much. I think You added so much value to my listeners today and anyone interested in moving abroad.
Oh,
Thanks so much. I
yeah.
appreciate it. And
Jump off the ship and go out and take a swim in some new waters.
buy a
And
flight, man, and figure it out
you're
from there,
going,
right?
yeah,
You
you're
know,
going to find some new things. And if you're just starting that first business in New York, I had to get out. And ultimately I learned all these things. I left the United States too, and I learned a lot of new things. I would say, stay out of that rut, go out and
Yeah.
test yourself a little bit. You can do things that you don't think you can even do. So
That's right. Whatever it is you decide to do, man, enjoy it.
yeah, we'll be in
And
touch.
we'll be in touch.
Okay. Look
Thanks, man.
forward to it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Matt Chambers Connects. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes where we'll dive deeper into these two fascinating worlds. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Matt Chambers Connects. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube Music, and many other major podcast platforms so you don't miss a show. Also, please join us on our social media channels so you can connect with other listeners and ask your most pressing questions. And also tell us what types of guests you'd like to see on the show. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.